All right. I hope that everyone is here. I see people that are popping in right now on this live feed, and I know there's only a few people here right now. Um, and thank you so much for joining me on this particular live feed for Saturday, July 20th. And I did a live feed just a little while ago, thinking that I was going to be able to do something with this particular software that I'm using. So I want to thank you guys for being patient. Those who did show up, I know guys like Ryan Medina who have popped in and said something. I see Strong Body, Strong Soul is here. So hello to you. I don't know your name, but I know that you are a subscriber to this YouTube channel, and I know that you've asked questions and made comments before too. So if you can tell me your name in the chat, I'd be happy. And those of you who are watching this on replay, you're always welcome to join me on these live feeds on YouTube, and I will do my best to help you out. So today we are going to be talking about setting up a Google form for your podcast. Now, here's the story when it comes down to setting up a Google form. Google Forms really are they are like the basics of, I guess, of collecting data. And when you're collecting data, you could use platforms and other survey, like SurveyMonkey, other survey pieces of software in order to collect data. And someone had asked in the previous live feed that I had done earlier a couple of hours ago how I set up a Google form. So in these particular live feeds, I typically have a link down in the description of the video. And what I'd ask people to do is I ask them to leave their question in the form so that I can read it on a spreadsheet over here on my other screen. So what I'm going to show you today is I am going to show you how to create that particular Google form. Now, you can use a Google form for just about anything you want. Maybe you are trying to collect shirt sizes for t-shirts that you're making for your podcast. Maybe you are trying to collect, I don't know, any other types of pieces of data. Maybe you're collecting more quotes. I don't know, quotes for your particular podcast. I'm not too sure what you would be using this for, but I want to make sure that we could do that. Now, here's the thing with today's live feed, and hopefully you can hear me okay. Hopefully I will be able to pull in a Skype phone call too. So if you have a question about Google Forms, I will put the number up on the screen, and I will let you know when you can call. This is all a little bit brand new to me, so I am sort of trying to piece this together in real time. So I will say this: I'm not perfect at everything, but I am always willing to try. And whether or not it's a comment or someone says something to me that they may disagree with. Last live feed, someone did disagree with me, and it was this idea of imposter syndrome, and I gave my definition. He gave his definition. His definition was probably a little more accurate, and that individual did reach out to me and said that they didn't mean to offend me because the way it was coming off, it sounded offensive and rude. And, I just want people to know that when I come into these live feeds, I try to do my best to give you the best information. I certainly don't want to lead you astray on any of the information that I'm giving you. And in this case, I'm happy to admit that I am wrong. I'm not right in all instances. So when it comes to any pieces of content, I'm learning just like along with a lot of you guys. Now, even though I have done podcasting for quite some time now as a podcast producer, it doesn't mean that what I am using inside of this particular platform doesn't mean that I know everything or all the components to it. Now, today, when I show you how to create the Google form, I'm going to be switching back and forth between the screens, and I'm going to let you know how I am creating all this, but I'm also going to be moving and maneuvering with the software that is streaming this particular live video. So hopefully you will be able to understand and know that there will be imperfections, and I think there's always going to be some imperfection within podcasting, especially if you're doing a podcast like, say, an interview style podcast. There will be always some type of imperfection. So that's what I want to share with you today. So I want to say hi to a couple of other people who are here. I see Luigi the Warrior, who is here. So it's good to see that you are here and tuning in. If you are tuning in, make sure that you share this live feed out on your Twitter feed. Let people know that I'm still going live and helping people out. So, and of course, I realize that it's probably late afternoon for those who are on the East Coast right now, or maybe mid-afternoon, and people are in the middle of their day. I just actually finished eating up brunch, which was something that I didn't eat breakfast. So, I was also probably feeling a little hangry when the person commented, so I have to apologize to that person and get back to them here after a little while. So, okay, so today we're going to be talking about developing and creating a Google form. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my Google Drive account. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a Google Drive account for yourself, or Google Drive, or some type of, Google is what it is, okay? And this is actually a very simple process. It's a simple process. It's just going to depend on the questions that you want to put inside of your particular Google form, and how you want to collect that data and how you want to see that data itself, okay? So we'll do it all here in real time just for you, so that we can make sure that we get people to understand how this all works. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip on over to my other screen. And can you guys do me a favor, a huge favor? Okay. I think I am here. I think I'm back in business. So can you guys tell me if I am back in business or not? I'm not too sure. Looks like there's only 4 of you guys here. So what I want to do is I want to wait for you guys to come back in on the live feed. The software seems to have stopped in the middle of the live stream, which is completely okay. But I think you guys can hear me. So what I'm going to do, let's see. Okay, Brian Medina says that we are good. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. The software just seemed to has stopped there for a second. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump back into my screen, and I'm going to actually minimize this right here so that I don't have to see anything. And so what we see here is my Google Drive account. So I have a Google Drive account, and basically what I can do is I can go ahead and create anything that I want inside of Google Drive based off of what I'm doing in the folders area. Okay, so if I wanted to create a brand new document, I can create a brand new document by coming up and clicking the new section right here, and then I can find what it is that I'm looking for. Okay, so you can create a doc, you can create a Google Sheet, a Google Slide, and then when you come over, you should have a tab that says More. Okay, so there's this tab that should say More, and you'll see right there is Google Forms. Now, Google has a really great interface when it comes down, or not interface, I should say, but they have great tools that are free for us to use so that we can create better content. All right. So here we have Google Forms. So all I'm going to do is just click on Google Forms. Okay. So I'll click on Google Forms, and it's going to open up a document. And this is just basically the form itself. All right. So this is a very blank form. So what I want to do first is I want to title the form. So let's just say it's t-shirt sizes that I want to collect. I need to collect names, and I need to collect t-shirt sizes. All right. So I'm going to come here, and I'm just going to name the form itself t-shirt sizes. So we got t-shirt sizes, and then we'll press enter, and that is the title of the document itself. All right. So we're going to come in. You see that it renames it, says t-shirt sizes. And then we want to come in and we can create a description. So this description is what is going to be shown on the actual page itself. It'll say why you're collecting this data, okay? So we'll just say, I'm collecting t-shirt sizes for our yearly football tournament. Please answer the questions below. And there we go. So we'll leave it like that, okay? So now we have this description of why we're collecting the data, okay? So now we want to come down and do our questions, all right? So we want to add a question. So we just want to ask, like, so what is your name? What is your first name? We'll just say first name, question mark. And then we want to change automatically, we want to change it over to a short answer. Now, you saw that it automatically changed everything over. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at this, and you can see there's short answer. We go to this drop-down menu. We see there's short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, check boxes, drop down, file uploads. So something that you should know, I think, inside of this particular platform, as far as Google Drive is concerned, the Google Drive that I am using for right here it's actually G Suite. So I'm using G Suite, which is a paid service. So it's I think like $10 a month. You get your own custom domain name for your email address, and then from there you can get Drive access. And I think when you get the $10 a month plan, you get unlimited Drive space. So that's what I have on mine. I'm pretty sure they still got that deal going on, but I have unlimited Drive space. So when you have actually a normal Google Drive account, you only get a certain amount of gigs. I can't remember if you go up to a terabyte or not, but with a G Suite account, you can get unlimited space and storage. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave that at. So let's go back over to the screen. So here we have, the reason why I bring that up is because here's file upload. And I believe that you can do this in a normal Google Drive account. You can include something like a file upload. So it says there, you can see it says, let respondents upload files to Drive. Files will be uploaded to the form owner's Google Drive. Respondents will be required to sign in to Google when the file upload questions are added to a form. Make sure this is the only share form with this. Make sure to only share this form with people you trust. So the reason that is a case is that you don't want someone uploading some type of virus and then you get a virus and you download it onto your computer. So the way that I use the file upload is I actually use it for photos, for podcast artwork whenever I'm creating podcast artwork. So that's just something that you should like maybe consider whenever you do a podcast episode. You want to get someone who is like maybe a guest and they are, I don't know, like let's just say that they are you're interviewing them for, I don't know, printing companies or something like that. You know, and you want to upload like different images or I don't know, it could be anything. Okay. It could be files that are images. It could be files that are documents, but be careful. Just make sure you're sharing that with the right people. All right. So forgive me for being a little bit off of course right there because, you know, this is imperfect right now. So what we're going to use is just short answer. Okay. So we're going to be using short answer in this case. So what is your first name? Now we can copy this particular question itself, or we can add a new question over here. So it says add question. Then you can say import certain questions if you wanted to. That looks like it's brand new because I've never seen that before. You can add a title and description, which would be this area up here. It could be a new title and description, but we don't want to do that. You can add photos. You can embed video. So if I wanted to embed a video on here, I could do that, or I can just add a new section. So basically when someone takes the survey, you can add a new section to whatever you want, and then it will go to a different page. So I can explain that a little bit later. So we'll go ahead and click delete selection. And what we want to do is we want to create here just a new question. So add a question. And so we'll say, what is your t-shirt size? T-shirt size. We'll do it that way. So what's your t-shirt size? And then look at that. It already adds up all of the options for your t-shirt size. So if I wanted to add XL, extra small, small, large, extra large, and double X, you can see that it's already adding it there for you. And then let's say that you have some people who are triple X. So we would want to add add other, and then go triple X. Oops, hang on real quick. Other. Typically it works like this. Oh, wait, maybe it's like this. Oh, here we go. We go XXXL, and we'll add that right there. And then we can get rid of this other right here, okay? Or maybe you do want to add other, so you could add other at the very bottom, and it's just other. But in this case, you probably wouldn't want to do that, right? So there we have it. We're done. And then we have the two questions that are on our list. All right. So we have those done. Then let's say that your first name must be something that is required. So you see there's this toggle right here. We can toggle it and say the first name is definitely required, and the form isn't complete unless they actually have this right here completed. All right. So we'll look at the form in itself when it's done. All right. So let's say what's your t-shirt size, and let's add one more section. We'll just say we want to add add a question, and they'll say, like, what is your favorite color? And I'm just making it up because that could be, what's your favorite color for your t-shirt? What is your favorite color? Question mark. And then we'll see what it provides for us. Nothing. It doesn't do anything that's autocomplete, so we'll just go ahead and leave a short answer right there as well. Okay, so we're ready to go right there. So let's say we're done with our form. We are good to go. We don't need to do anything else other than submit this form somewhere. Okay. Now, one thing that I think that you should do as a podcaster is that you should have some type of, I would say, link shortening, like using a bit.ly link or something like that, so that the link isn't too long for anyone to actually go in and try to remember. So I would use a bit.ly link. I use Rebrandly. Actually, I use Rebrandly every single day. In fact, Rebrandly's been good to me, but you can get a Rebrandly customized short link for yourself, which is what you see with those shanman.tips/whatever. So those are custom domains or links, I should say, and those do cost, I think, like it's like $12 or something like that in order to get that. So that's just something that you have to think about. All right. So going back into this form, let's just say this form is finished. All right. And so how do we submit the form, or how do we get it out to the eyes of the people? So, excuse me. So what we want to do is we want to come on over first. We want to preview it and see what it looks like. All right. So we'll preview it, and it's going to pop up a new window here, and this is what the form will look like. And you see, this is just preview, and you see t-shirt sizes. I'm collecting t-shirts, and it tells you everything that we need to know. And then there's a submit button down at the very bottom, and you'll be able to submit something right there. Okay, so that's going to be something that's pretty easy. So we pretty much have that all ready to go. And let's say we don't need the preview anymore, so we're going to go ahead and click out of that. And then let's say we want to change the color. So you can come up here to this customized theme or the palette, and you can go ahead and click on the palette, and you can change the color, anything that you want, or you can change the header that you want. And so Google will give you, let's say, just different styles of header themes that you can use. So let's just say we want to use this one with crayons because we talk about colors in this. So we're going to go ahead and use that. And then you see that the header is those crayons. Now you can do this. You can create your own in Photoshop or in Adobe Illustrator. It's going to be up to you. And then you can see that there are options here. What are the theme options? What do you want it to look like on the background? I want it to look, theme is green, and then the background color, we want kind of a green as well. So, excuse me. So there you go with that. And then what's the font that you want? Do you want to change the font? You want it playful? It doesn't look like there's too many cool fonts, but we'll just say it's formal. And so there you can see that there's a different font size or a different font itself. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to send this so that people can go ahead and access the link or access the form. So when we come in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this link into the chat for you, and I want you to go ahead and just answer these basic questions. So what I will do is I will go ahead and copy the link, go to this link over here, and Google will give you a shortened URL if you want. So I'll go ahead and copy it right here. And then we're going to go ahead and press paste. I'm going to paste it inside of my software that I'm using over here. So I'm going to paste it into the chat. So there it is in the chat for you. So do me a favor and go ahead and access that form. Now, before I do that, I need to make sure that the form is available for everyone to go ahead and access. So what you have to do is you have to come in up here to your settings. So you got to come up to settings, and then you see it says here, and it might not be like this for a normal Google Drive account, but what you want to do is just check mark or make sure that you uncheck restrict to users in Team Shanman and trusted domains. So you want to make sure that that is unchecked so that everyone can access the form. So now that everyone has accessed the form, we should be able to submit responses for this particular form. So what I'm going to do is I am going to actually access the form itself. I'm going to bring it on over here. And then I got to take this back over here. So let's move that back in. And so here we go. We have the t-shirt sizes. So let's just say we're going to answer the question, and we're going to say Shannon. And then what's your t-shirt size? And we'll say large. Excuse me. And then what's your favorite color? And we'll say blue. And we just click submit. All right. So we're going to click submit. We're ready to go. You can choose whether or not they can submit another response or not. So let's just say we're done. We are done. And you can see in here there is one response. And so we come in and we look at the response on this form itself. So we're back in the editing the form, and you can see that there is one response. You can get responses in real time, which is a very cool thing to do. So what you're going to want to do is come over here, and you can see that there is a response. And see the response here. It says it is Shannon, and the t-shirt size is, like I said, it says one response. What size is that? You fly over and it says large. So there's one large right there. And then, of course, the answer here is going to say, what's your favorite color? Blue. Blue is going to be your, the color that you would want to pick for your t-shirt. So these responses will all come in real time. All right. Now, how I'm able to read the questions instead of like going through, and when you get multiple responses, you can come in and look at the individual responses themselves, and you can be like, oh, okay. And it kind of prints it out in as a form. So when you're doing something like, say, kind of like an intake form, and you do like an intake where, I'm trying to think here because I've done this before. When you do just an intake form itself, it's just a matter of, how am I going to say this right now? Like basically what has happened is that when I have booked a guest, I've had them fill out the form, and then I've been able to print the form itself. So when you come in and you look at this form right now, you can see that I could print this particular response itself. So I would click on the response and prepare it for print, and then it would show up, and then it'd be like, oh, okay, well, we're preparing to print, and then we can send it on over to my printer. And I just printed the forms out themselves. Now, could do it that way, but the way that I do it particularly is I am actually going over here, and I am I want to look at the summary, but I want to look at everything in a Google Sheet itself. So I come back into the responses, and I make sure I'm in summary, and then I come on over here to create spreadsheet. And once I click on that, it says, yes, create a spreadsheet, t-shirt sizes responses, or I could select an existing spreadsheet that is already in my Google Drive. All right. But in this case, I just want a fresh spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. And now that I have clicked create, it's going to create a whole new spreadsheet for me. And when you start doing these, you can see the responses come out in real time on the spreadsheet themselves. So in the link on this particular, in the chat itself, you can click on that form. And then if you wanted to, you can go ahead and submit your t-shirt or whatever. Okay. So you can see here, it says, what is your first name? What is your t-shirt size? And what is your favorite color? So I just come in and I just typically adjust the forms themselves. You know, I just adjust everything that is here. And then I adjust not the forms, the cells themselves, so that I can see or read what they are saying. So once I have that, then I am pretty much good to go. All right. So I have that all ready to go. Shannon's my first name. What's your t-shirt size? It's large. So what I'll do is I'll typically come into the form itself, and then I will look at, I want to lock the top row. So I would say, let me see here, view. I want to freeze row number 1. So I freeze row number 1 so that when I scroll in the spreadsheet, that I'm not scrolling with row number 1 and missing everything. I know, or I can actually access the information a little easier for myself. So that's just one way that you would do that. And you will be able to see all of the data, again, like I said, in real time come up. So that's really how you create a Google form inside of Google Drive. You can use this for data. You can use it for just about anything that you want inside of your Google Drive. Oh, excuse me, I'm over here fixing the camera. You just got to figure out the applications that you want to use the Google form for. So I hope that has helped you out. Now, I want to do another test, and it's going to be totally up to you. And I don't know who's watching right now. And if you're in the chat, I can't even tell who's in the chat right now. Let's see here. I just see Luigi the Warrior might still be here. Strong Body, Strong Soul might be here, and Ryan Medina. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to put this up right now. If you're in the United States, you can give me a call and shoot me a call. If you have a question about podcasting, you can go ahead and shoot me a call right now. I do believe, let me just double check that I have my Skype turned on and make sure that you are able to call in, because you may not be able to call in. Oh, let me see. I'm over here. Let's see. What do we got? Calling. Call forwarding disabled. And this is the beauty of doing everything live. The beauty of everything live. So I think you can call in. Oops, there's a bug that's in the way. Looks like you can call in. So if you want to try and call in, you're more than welcome. It will call in right now, and we can see if this all works. And then if you have a question, we'll just do it. So in the meantime, I just want to encourage you guys to always be testing the software, testing what is going to be working for you and your podcast, testing anything that will make your podcast sound a little bit better. So that's really what I want to kind of stress to all of you guys. Now, if there are not going to be any callers, that is completely fine. The option is up there for you to use and to give me a call. Now, I won't have Skype up all of the time, so you could call me like after office hours, and I'll be like, oh yeah, there's no one, no, I'm not going to answer or anything like that. So, that's fine. So let's see here. So hi, Ed Markowitz. It's good to see you. Live is more interesting than canned. Yes, I can completely agree. Now, Ed, you are more than welcome to call me if you are feeling brave enough to call in, just so that we could test the feature itself. So I'm not too sure if you are willing and able to do that. I'm not sure where you are located, but you can also add me on Skype, and I will get the notification right over here as well. I do want to do a live feed eventually for everyone, because there have been questions that I've been getting asked about, and I'm not saying like a massive amounts of questions, but have been questions that I've been getting asked about editing processes and techniques. And I do realize that there are a ton of techniques out there and processes of how you can edit a podcast. There was a particular question that I had where the individual wanted to know why he could not get his equipment to record on different multi-tracks. And I do want to answer that question for him, but in a future live feed. So that might be something that will be helpful for him when it comes down to creating his own content. So again, you are more than welcome to reach out to me on that phone number, 602-910-4212. You may be watching on your phone, and I do understand that, but if you are watching on a mobile device, give me a call and I'll be able to answer your question. Or maybe you have Skype and you want to Skype in, we can Skype the video in. And I know this works because I've done it just as a test here at the house. So it just basically, I know it works, but I want to see how it looks on with someone else calling in. So again, you're always welcome to call in if you want, or you could just always leave the comment in the section over on the right hand side of this video. So with that, I just want to kind of close up by saying, if we're not going to get any calls, I want to close up by saying that always be trying to do something brand new, and always be trying to create content that is going to be wildly engaging with people. And when I say wildly engaging, I'm not saying that it's going to be wildly engaging all of the time, but I want you to create the best possible content on your podcast for your guests or for your listeners themselves. That's going to help them come back into your funnel. So that's really what I'm talking about here is I want to talk about getting people in the funnel itself. So I hope that you can follow me in that journey so that you can see, where we are going in terms of developing better content. All right. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close up this live feed. I'm going to leave it live for the most part, and we will just kind of move on from there. Okay. In the meantime, thank you guys who are here watching the live feed. I really appreciate it. There's some things that I do need to work on with the particular live feed. There are elements that I want to bring in that will make the live feed experience a little bit better. But for the most part, again, it's always about experimenting, learning, and trying as many times as you can to get it right. So you guys right now who are watching are seeing it at a very, very raw level right now. So you may see me building it out over time. All right. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a great Saturday. It is now starting to get warm over here in my office room, and I do need to kind of I do need to cool off because it's getting hot. Let's see here. Well, Ryan, here's a story, man. You can call up and just test the Skype call with me, and see if it works. I mean, I'd be happy just to see if it's testing, and then we would be able to just chat for a few while I deal with the gnat that is in here kind of buzzing around my head. So what I'll do is I'll stay on just a few seconds longer, and if you call me up, we'll just run a test. That's all it is. So let me see what we got here. Let's see. I got an email from someone, and he was actually the guy who's wondering about editing a podcast or recording a podcast in multi-track. So I look forward to your next trip down the podcast lane. Thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate it. And hi, Bill's mom. It's good to see you. I'm getting ready to jump out. Hang on real quick. So this must be Ryan, I assume?
Yep.
Hey, what's going on, Ryan? How you doing?
It is. I'm good, thank you.
Good, man. What do you got going on for your Saturday afternoon?
Just relax with my family. It's like Arizona hot here in Boston, so we're dying.
But you got all that humidity over there in Boston, don't you?
Yes, we do. It is extremely humid.
Well, I hope that you can stay cool. Now, here's the question that I have, because I know that this is something that happens in Portland. I know that because I have friends in Portland. They say they don't have air conditioners in Portland. So do you guys have air conditioners in Boston?
We do. We have central. Most places here are so old that they don't have the ductwork for central air, so they got to put in window air conditioners, which is terrible. Our old house was like that, but when we bought our new house, we bought one with central air, so it's nice that we can just turn on the AC and
absolutely.
not die.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I know what you're talking about with the central air, because where I live now in Phoenix, the building that I'm in was built in the 1960s, and so they haven't done a whole lot of, like, I guess you could say, renovations to the building itself. So we still run on a central air system here in this particular building, and in Arizona, it's not like it's kind of unheard of to have central air. So they have a chiller system that is across the way in the parking lot, and then of course that's pushing all the air down in the ground and into all the different duct areas. And then we have in the actual condo themselves the blower unit with the coils itself, and the air only gets down to, like, I would say anywhere between 79 or 80, something like that. So it's not very cold, but it's just enough to be bearable. So that's why I was asking. I was wondering if you had air conditioning or you had like a chiller system.
No, we have good old-fashioned central air conditioning, because it would be unbearable otherwise. Although my office is like one of the hotter spots in the room, so I'm in my office watching your thing, and it's like, oh, it's getting warm in here. I need to open the door.
I certainly understand that. I got the door open right now too, and so I'm trying to let some of that air circulate in right now. So I just want to ask you, so what's the story? What do you got going on with your podcast? What's your podcast about, or what's it going to be about?
My podcast is about writing. It's about how to take kind of your life skills. I mean, I've been working a corporate job as a software engineer for 20 years, so I kind of want writing to be my last career after I retire from my job. So it's kind of how can you take your real life skills and translate that into writing? And it's surprising on how much you can actually take from life experience and translate it to writing. So that's kind of my podcast is, learning the basics of how to write a good story. There's actually a lot of craft involved with writing. I think, there's a lot of misconceptions on what it takes to write a book and whatnot. And so being able to learn that, it's not as easy as just sitting down at your computer and hammering out a book. There's a lot of work that goes in before you even get to that point.
What are the top 3 things that you deal with as a writer when it comes down to coming up with the story?
It's a lot of you get an idea, but it's being able to take that idea and turn it into a story. I mean, I get ideas all the time. I keep a notebook. I write down ideas for stories and kind of let them sit and churn, and it may never go there. And that's kind of one of the big things is you got to learn that just because you have a good idea doesn't mean you can make a good story out of it. It's got to have some teeth to it. And that gets back to the craft of writing that, you have to learn craft, that there's a lot that gets involved. I mean, I guess one of the unfortunate side effects is as you learn story craft, as you watch movies, you can actually you start to dissect the story craft instead of enjoying the content. I'm sure you listen to things on your radio and you're like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. You have a hard time separating yourself from the craft to the content. And, it takes a lot of work. You got a lot of study. I mean, you got to, read books, read authors and the genres that you want to write in. And, it's the same thing with music or any other art form is you need to study the craft around what you want to write. So if you want to write science fiction, you've got to study science fiction writing and get all the key elements of a science fiction story.
Right.
And as with anything else, here's the rules. And if you can do it, break the rules.
Right.
The rules only apply as long as you can make it work. If you can do it different and it works, great. That's also good, And there's also a lot of fear of, well, what if the story's been told before?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remind yourself, and that's what I was talking about with the imposter syndrome from the cast this morning, is everybody worries, well, what if the story's told before? Of course, there's only so many stories you can tell. I mean, they've literally broken it down to like 5 types of stories. And it's how you craft that story, how it comes from you, because it's always going to be different coming from you.
Right.
You could have the same story idea and have 10 people write the story, and you're going to get 10 completely different stories because everybody's different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and when that individual was talking about imposter syndrome, I will say, his definition of the idea of imposter syndrome was probably a lot more on point than how I was trying to convey. And I think when we talk about imposter syndrome, it is about not feeling good enough. And so and doubting ourselves into what we believe that we can do. Me not being able to convey something like that, was not meant to confuse how people, but when it comes down to the imposter syndrome, we do look to other people and we do look to the ones that are doing it. And then we say to ourselves, well, can I be good enough to do it like this? Or can I do it just like them? And how do I not, am I doubting myself and my own abilities to be able to create? So the definition of imposter syndrome, definitely I had felt at the time, was a lot more broad in a sense. And I think it does still have a kind of a broad definition, but there is a definite definition behind the idea of imposter syndrome. But what I like what you're saying is that what you mean is that you're trying to be as original as possible when it comes down to creating the story of your content so that you can have something that is a little more unique. It's interesting. You also bring up, there's another point I want to bring up is that there was a video that I had watched, and I'm sure you've seen this on Facebook. If you haven't, I've been getting targeted with these ads from the Masterclass series. Have you seen the Masterclass series pop up in your news feed at all?
I've actually watched several of the Masterclasses.
Okay.
I actually have a subscription.
Okay, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. So there was one last night about where it was Carlos Santana, and he talks about how to play guitar. And so he's one of the guys that's going to teach. I'm sure that you probably see it if you have a subscription to that particular Masterclass. And he talks about it's not necessarily about the guitar. It is not necessarily about the pedals. It is not necessarily about all of those things that make you sound good. What makes you sound good is the heart and the soul that you are putting into it. And I have always believed that because I grew up playing the guitar as a kid, and I kind of translated and utilized that knowledge into the things that I wanted to create, whether it be a podcast, whether it be an essay, whether it be something that I create on the radio. So can you tell me a little bit about what kind of heart it takes to craft the perfect story?
It takes a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I think that's the thing is when you see a book on a shelf and you read it, that's not the first draft. Your first draft is going to suck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to have to go through revision. You're going to have to rewrite it, and you're going to have to keep working at it. And that's the thing that people need to learn is you're never going to get a perfect story the first time. Same thing when you listen to a song. I mean, that Santana's been working on that song for a while to perfect it, and that's like any art. You got to practice it. You're going to have to go through iterations, and that's how you get the perfect story. Is you write it and you get feedback from other people. That's a big thing too. Is having people read early versions of your story and say, I don't like this. I don't like this character. I don't like how this works, and fixing things that people like. It's just like with movies and having people preview a movie and saying, I hate the ending, so they change the ending.
Right.
And it's the same thing with books. It's you have to have people read it, and that's scary.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Is having people read your stuff, especially in an unfinished format, and getting feedback with taking constructive feedback that this isn't working for me. And I think that works for podcasts too. If you get feedback from people saying, well, I like your content, but your format kind of sucks. I have a hard time following. Being able to take that and make it better.
Right.
And doing that. And that's a lot of what it really boils down to, is being able to take feedback and not get offended. I mean, you're definitely going to have to grow a thick skin. I mean, you're in radio, so
right.
I'm sure you have a very thick skin.
Right. Yeah.
And,
you get thick skin, and then you learn to push out a lot of the people who aren't contributing in the right way. Like contributing constructively, not necessarily rude, but saying, it might work a little bit better this way, as opposed to just saying, here are my thoughts and this is how I do it.
Right. Exactly.
So let me ask you this, because I want to go back to the podcasting question real quick, but I want to ask you this, and you talk about the idea of feedback. How do you know when to stop listening to people when it comes to your feedback? Let's say when it comes to the writing process, and let's say when it comes to your podcast.
I think it comes to the point when you feel like you've got a finished product and you know that you can't make it better, especially when you publish a book. Once you put it out there and it's published, it is what it is. You got to learn to let it go. And that was one of the things, Neil Gaiman, if you've heard of him.
Yes, I've heard of Neil Gaiman. Yeah.
Famous writer. And one of the things he says is at a certain point, you have to let it go, and it's not your story anymore. It belongs to the world. And so you have to separate yourself. It's like, okay, this isn't my book anymore. It's the world's book, and they're going to do with it as I please. And you start your next story and take what you learned, and you're going to read it. You're going to say, man, I did terrible things in that book. I sure wish I had fixed that. But that's part of the learning process. Mm-hmm. You can only write as good as you are at that point, and you get better. I mean, think of Stephen King, and that's part of the imposter syndrome too. It's like you think, well, I'll never write as good as Stephen King. The man's published like 100 books over a 40-year career. You're not going to be at that level if you've only been writing for a few years.
Right.
And
so,
and that's the thing, is you got to understand that you're never going to be a master at this, that you're always going to be learning.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that's very true, because I can't remember who it was that I was talking with, but or what I was watching, but I remember seeing someone talk about a movie that they had created, and they said to me, they didn't say to me, but they said in the interview itself, they said, the movie was actually not meant to be that way. In fact, what I think it was the movie Waterworld. We all know that Waterworld was kind of it was like a box office flop. Personally, I liked the movie. It's part of my youth. But when you watch the interview of how the movie was made and the flop that it entailed in the idea of the production, the story actually had so many hands inside of it by Kevin Costner and the other producers that it didn't actually turn out to be the way they wanted it to, and it actually cost them more money to create the movie itself. And the movie didn't come out the way that they wanted it to be. They wanted it to be kind of like a Mad Max style of movie, which it had that feel to it, but it just did not measure up to, I guess, a lot of people's standards. So when it comes down to the feedback and learning how when do you stop listening to people who are giving feedback that maybe just don't even know what you're trying to convey in the message of your book or your story, before you realize that it's someone else's story, you just kind of have to, I guess it's kind of like you're taking it all on faith at that point. That goes for podcasting, it goes for movies or anything like that. So I would imagine in writing for you, when you complete the story, is it more about the faith, knowing that the story that you've constructed is going to be the best that it can?
Absolutely. It's the best that you could make at that moment in time, and that's the best you can do. That's what any author can do, is make it the best story they can at that time. And as you read authors' books, you'll read, if they make a series that you read later books, you can tell that they're getting better, because they're getting better at the craft of writing. And you just have to accept that this is never going to be perfect.
Right. Now let me transition and move over to your podcast itself. Now, you've been creating a podcast, and you have reached out to me on YouTube and said, I'm looking for different tips and tricks and techniques. What is it exactly that you're trying to leverage with your podcast? Is it for more book sales? Is it to create a community? What is it all about?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, I definitely want a community to share I enjoy being involved. There's a whole writing community out in like Twitter and even on YouTube. There's other writers that have YouTube channels, and I'm not really a YouTube person to broadcast my face, but I like the podcast idea. It's more mobile. People can listen to it while they're doing work, and that was my idea why I wanted to get into podcasting, is conveying the same information, because I like to listen to podcasts while I'm working because I can listen to it while I work, but I can't really sit and watch YouTubes or I'm going to get fired.
Oh, come on, man.
My boss is not going to be happy if I'm sitting around watching YouTube all day. But I can listen to podcasts and work. So, and that was my idea, is I wanted to go to a different medium that could give the same information that's available on YouTube, but you could listen to it in the car while you're doing dishes or something else. So,
right.
That was the idea of why I wanted to podcast, and just conveying similar information. I mean, there's only so much information. I want to convey not only how to be a writer, but my personal writing experience, connect to a community of people who are in similar situations that want to learn to be a writer. That I've always, people always say, I've always wanted to write a book. Well, you can do it, but it's going to take work. And, there's a good quote that says, being a writer is like giving yourself homework every day, really, really hard homework. And that's what it's like. It's a job. You're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to put the time into it.
Yeah, I think that goes for just about anything that you do create. And I'm glad that you had said something like that, because I think this is the one thing where, when I go back and I look at, like, let's say, for instance, this YouTube channel, and I go back and I look at all the comments that people are putting on the YouTube channel, they say to me, well, I want to do it this way, and I want to do it this way, and I want it to sound like this, and I want it to sound professional, whatever. And I say, well, you're going to have to either invest money or you're going to have to invest time. It's one of the two. And sometimes it's both. So when it comes down to the investment of the money or the time, you eventually do learn. And I think and it's a concept that I have been really, really kind of latching onto over the past couple of days, where it's been the idea of investment, the word investment. And we always worry about the idea of paying money or spending time on something. So a lot of the times it's just people don't want to spend the time to learn how to do something. Say, for instance, writing a book. And so are there shortcuts to writing a book? Yeah, maybe you can dictate and put it into some type of dictation and then someone transcribe it. But it doesn't translate as well as whenever you maybe are sitting down actually at the keyboard typing it out, because you want to make sure that maybe a certain sentence or a paragraph might be fitting or matching up with the rest of the story. It just really kind of all depends, I would imagine. But I think what I'm trying to get at is that it's the idea of putting the time and the effort, because that's what makes you good.
Exactly, and that's exactly right. Is you got to put the time and effort. How do you get to be a better writer? You got to write, and you've got to accept that you're going to write terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I write stuff and I'm like, oh, this is awful, but I just keep writing, because that's how you get better. Is you go back and like I said, the way you become a good writer is you become an excellent editor and rewriter.
Yeah.
Is you take this and say, I can say this better.
Right.
Yeah, I get the idea what I'm saying here. Another famous quote is, the first draft is you telling yourself the story. No one's ever going to read it. That's as bad as your book's ever going to be.
Yeah.
Is your first draft. And so, by the time you get it out there, you're going to have put a lot of time in it. And that, it's the reworking the story. It's adding stuff. It's changing things. There's a lot of groundwork that goes into making that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So where have you seen the successes with your podcast and the writing that goes behind your particular podcast? And where have you seen the success with the podcast, and what are the little wins that you're getting right now, even though maybe your podcast isn't doing as many downloads as you want? What are the things that you are seeing success with your podcast?
I see that, they're actually, I do have a fairly consistent listener base that, the same areas. I mean, I've gotten people that they're downloading my podcast in like Ireland. I have several listeners in Ireland, a couple in France. And to me, that's the thing. I'm like, wow, it's reaching out to not just people in the U.S., like my other writer friends that know I have this podcast that are downloading this in the United States and in Canada, but I'm getting people that I'm like, I don't know anybody in Ireland that's going to download my podcast, but I consistently have people in Ireland downloading my podcast. And for me, that's the wins I like, is like, I know that it's reaching other people that I don't know. And that's what I'm looking for right now, is just to be able to reach and have downloads in different parts that I know isn't just my friends and family listening.
Yeah, your mom or dad just aren't commenting and saying, giving the pat on the back. Good job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know that, if I'm getting listeners, I mean, I'm even Germany, and it's like, I don't know anybody in Germany that's going to listen to my podcast. So that's the kind of ones I look for. I know the numbers, you can get way too tied up in download numbers. I just like to see that there's new places that it's reaching. That's the win for me. That's the metric I guess I go for is that it's reaching out to new places. And even within the United States, it's like, I've got people listening in states I really don't know anybody. So
right.
I know that it's at least getting out there to people to listen, that people are finding it and enjoying it. So
yeah, and I mean, we have to go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just say that's what I go for right now is I just want to know that people are people, that it's reaching people and that they're listening to it.
Yeah, and I think what is important when it comes down to podcasting is that you have to take the little wins, every little win that you get. Now, when I talk about podcasting from the sense and the perspective of, okay, we want to build a podcast that has content that is valuable for people. What most podcasters were going to realize, they're going to be putting a lot of work into it. And I mean, that this is a thing. It's like, it's a matter of you got to record the phone call, or you got to record the interview, or you got to record the podcast itself. Then you got to go in and maybe if you want to, you can edit it. Personally, me, I'm not someone who does a whole lot of editing because I do believe that there's a certain feel that you get when it comes down to something that is a little more natural like this. Like, it's very natural, transparent, and we get to hear that. So it's not edited. So where I see it is that, like, we're always trying to grow and build out something. So it's going to take time to create these podcasts. And where I want to see podcasters move is into the next phase of their life. I'm not asking podcasters to jump in and start monetizing right away. The reason I push the ideas of monetization into the ears of other people is because I want them to start thinking about it. I'm not asking them to implement right away, but the implementation process actually happens when you start your podcast. Doesn't mean that you're executing right away, but you have to put the pieces in place and put those I guess you can say you just got to lay the foundation and the groundwork. Very similar to how you write a story. Everything's got a foundation that you've got to create in order to leverage it later down the line. So in the case of what you're doing, I don't know what your end goal would be. If your end goal is to say, this is what I want to be as my second job, let's see if we can go ahead and monetize off of it. I think it's a very possible thing. One thing that you did bring up in the conversation we just had, it was you said something along the lines of, like, you've got to work at it to the point to where you get really, really good at it. And I think that's just something that's really telling when it comes down to a podcast as well, is that you have to work at it until you get it right. And it's like to graduate into something new. And we do not graduate into something brand new until we know or we are ready. Sometimes we get scared, and I was completely like that with this YouTube channel and with my own podcast. And I would say to myself, I don't know if I want to do this thing because, what if no one watches? I really don't care anymore, because it's a matter of the idea that if I can put that quality content out into the world, it's reaching someone, and that shows in the analytics, of which is what you're telling me right now. It shows in your analytics on your hosting platform. Someone in Germany, in the Netherlands, wherever they're listening, they are listening and feeling impacted. And so that, I think, that's the win. You have to just take that little win, and then maybe you can make it into a bigger win over time. And like they always say, I can't remember what the quote is. It says, you got to take all the little wins to make one big win. That's ultimately what it is at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, tell you what, Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I want to thank you for testing this out. I got to say hi to a couple people who are in the live feed right now. We've got Two Mark Crew, who is back. And of course, George, the Poconos outdoors guy. And so maybe I want to get George on the line here in a second. But Ryan, I want to thank you for being on the call today and telling me a little bit about your podcast and what you plan on doing with it. Where would you like to see yourself in the next 6 months?
I guess I just like to see myself. Me personally, I'm a little irregular on my podcasting. Really, I say now.
Right.
So it's just trying to plan. I need to plan ahead, I guess is what I'm saying. I need to get to a place where I can plan ahead for my podcast, so I can keep a schedule of recording and releasing content on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that will be a difficult thing, but you will get used to it. And I will say this to people out there, because you bring up a very good point. you will not be able to hit something every week. If you can try and at least get close to the mark and always be aiming for the middle, at least you're going to be hitting around the middle of the mark. At least you're trying. I mean, that's the biggest thing. At least you're trying to get the content out and you're getting it into the ears of people. And if you miss a week, miss 2 weeks, I mean, the great example is this AC issue. Literally could not do content at all because it was so hot and I was sweating terribly and I just was not in a good mood. So I'm not always going to hit that content mark every single time, but I will be consistent as much as I can to deliver good content because I believe good content is why people keep coming back. So again, Ryan, I want to thank you again for showing up and being on the call. It means a lot to me for you to test. And I didn't know that we were going to do an impromptu interview, man.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you do. So thank you very much.
Not a problem, Ryan. You have a great day, okay?
You too.
All right, take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye. So if you want to call in, and that was very cool to see that Ryan calling in on today's Skype call. I mean, I didn't expect to do that interview with him at all, so that was a very impromptu thing. If you have a question you want to ask me, go ahead and hit me up on that phone line right there, 602-910-4212. The line will ring in over here on this end. You'll be able to hear it, and then we can bring you in. I would love to get George on the line if he's available. If not, then that's completely fine. I do have a question that is in here from Ed Markowitz. He says, I have a niche question. What most excites me is What most excites me is a wildly overcrowded field. My number 2 is underserved. So if number 2 is underserved, does that mean nobody is interested or nobody has even tried it? Honestly, Ed, where I would look at this is I would say that it's worth trying. It's worth going out and seeing if there is a market out there for it. Now, one way that you can do this is you can do a search and use something called answerthepublic.com. And if we can go over to answerthepublic.com, and we'll leave that number up if you want to go ahead and give a call in. And, if you want to tell me a little bit more about your podcast, we can go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and answer real quick. But I'm going to go ahead and hold on real quick before I get into the interview real quick. But what I would say with you, Ed, is that I want you to go ahead and I want you to go to answerthepublic.com and look at the keywords that you have in the niche that you are in and be able to see how many people are searching that out. You'll be able to see it in the graphs itself. And the graphs will be able to tell you what to use as a monitor to creating content. So I could go over here into, let me see here. We'll go over here to answerthepublic.com. Excuse me. Oops. The Skype call keeps coming up on me. Let's see here. Answer the public. And there we go. So if I come on over here to the screen and I look at answerthepublic.com, a keyword, so we could just say, like, let's say your keyword is archery. This
is George, Pocono Outdoors guy.
My boy George, how you doing, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. Thanks so much for joining on the live feed. I didn't expect to do this today, but I've been doing a lot of testing on the new software, and I figured, well, why not? Let's just go ahead and go live and see what's going on. I felt as though the last live feed could have really used this 100%, but it's better late than never, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was good this morning. That was a good show, and I just happened to catch this, so I thought we'd jump on and say hi.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So, George, I know that I've mentioned your particular podcast in the past before, and can you tell me what your podcast is about and how long you've been running your podcast?
Well, you want the long or short version?
Whatever you want, man. I mean, whatever you want. You tell me. You give information to give context to other people.
Yeah, well, first off, I've only been doing this about 3 years since the first time I picked up a camera. Mm-hmm. Now, when you talk about a podcast, mine's very unorthodox. I do more of a video cast. I always call it the podcast you can watch because we bring in, it's kind of an online interview. You can see us interacting. I have a partner, Josh, that works with me on the forum as well. So the goal we're trying to do is get and talk to other anglers around the country, actually around the globe. We talk to some folks that are international as well, and just try to bring in what they do, learn a little bit about their techniques. And it's all about fishing. We're just crazy about sport fishing, mostly freshwater, but we do some saltwater too. So the whole point of it was just kind of a get down, talk to anglers. It's a very grassroots kind of a thing. There's nothing fancy or theoretical, just guys, we're out fishing. What do you do? Tell me about yourself, your history. How did you get into fishing? What can you share with others? And how can we make other people better fishermen, basically?
Right. Yeah. So then when you decided to go ahead and start this podcast, how long did you have the idea in your head that, I want to do this like video podcast? Was it something that you saw as a hole that needed to be filled, or what was the driving force behind you starting the podcast?
Well, it was kind of backwards, actually. I do mostly videos on YouTube, and we'll go travel all over the place, and we'll fish with different people. And I had some surgery a couple of years ago, and I couldn't get out and fish, and I didn't want to stop doing my thing. I enjoy it. So I said, you know what? I wonder if I could do a video cast where I'm in a studio, we're interviewing other people, and it kind of took off. So it's something, now that I'm back on my feet, I haven't done as much of, but I do want to go back and resurrect that because I have some new ideas I want to come out with.
Oh, okay. So it was just based off of just kind of like, oh, this is something that I'm already doing. But here's the thing, when you communicated with me on YouTube, you were looking for, I guess, some new and different ideas to incorporate it into the video itself. And I've seen your particular video podcast on Facebook and how you broadcast it out, and it's done really, really well. What was the one hump that you had to get over when you started the podcast itself? What was the thing that was kind of holding you back that it wasn't a big deal at the end of the day?
I guess just getting, especially when you start doing stuff live.
Yeah.
That's kind of the biggest one. And my grandson's throwing a fit here.
It's okay. What's your grandson's name?
It's live, right? It's Nathaniel.
Well, tell Nathaniel we're happy to have him broadcasting on YouTube right now.
they always do that when you're live, right? It's
exactly.
Live.
So what was that hump?
So what was the biggest hurdle?
Yeah.
I guess, getting especially the sound right and all that. I know you give great tips and great advice on that. And that's one of the things I was really trying to tap you into at first was, I got a big old soundboard here. You see my equipment.
Yeah.
And I just wanted it to sound that radio quality. And initially I wasn't getting it. It turned out to be my microphones. Thank you very much for that tip, by the way.
You're very welcome.
And it was just bringing it all together. It's, you have a lot of ideas of content. I think the biggest thing to do is just get out there and try it. Is somebody going to hate you? Probably, but that's okay.
Yeah.
There's going to be 100 people that like you for the one person that's going to diss you.
Right. And I think that's a thing that we have to remember as podcasters. And, I deal with it in radio. I think I deal with it a little more on my audience these days know not to troll me, not to be rude or anything like that, because they know I just kind of will nix that out of the park. I'll just say oh, we're done. I'm not going to be talking with you. And I just kind of let them go. And I kind of bring that same mentality over into YouTube. What I have to understand is that in YouTube, not everyone knows how to communicate the right way. Not everyone knows how to write their comments in a way in which it doesn't sound as I wouldn't say offensive, but it's just not as edgy and sharp with the sharp tongue, because not everyone knows how to write. And so and it's not necessarily because I think everyone is uneducated in the writing process. Sometimes it's people who are coming from overseas and they just write a certain way, and that's how they communicate. So that's one area in which I know that I've had to learn how to adapt to. But when it comes down to, I guess I'd say like the people who don't like you, and you say, for that one person, you have like 100 people that are liking you. That's really, really true in the sense that there's so many more people that will support you in what you decide that you want to do, as opposed to that one person who's just telling you how much you suck. Because you have to remember, are they the ones getting on the camera, and are they actually doing it, or what? So I think that's really good advice that you're sharing with them. How have you had any trolls that have come in and tried to bombshell the video podcast?
Oh yeah, well, we have like one video we have up there, and it's got just about 500,000 views on it. And I think there was probably about maybe a half a dozen people that just left really derogatory comments. So you just ban them basically. So, and you go to their channel and they've got no videos, no subs. So it's, what are you doing to help the community besides bash everybody else kind of a thing?
Right. Yeah.
So they're the kind of people you don't need.
Oh, exactly. I agree with that. You don't need those people, and like you said, that's a great. I guess I don't. Would you say like a benchmark? I don't even know what's a benchmark because benchmarks mean that you're achieving something, but that's just kind of a great gauge to see if someone is commenting on your podcast or your video, that if they don't have any subscriptions to their particular channel, then I just kind of ignore it. I'm just like, well, they're probably stumbling onto my particular video for the first time, and I'm not going to really listen to it unless they're adding some type of value to it. And I think that's what we have to remember as whether you're doing video podcasts or you're doing radio style type of podcast, you have to remember that it's about value that you share with the audience, as opposed to just like, it's just not content. It's value that you're sharing into the ether, and not even the ether, but into the community itself. And that's what we're really looking for right there. Tell me one more thing. Exactly right. What's that?
I said that's exactly right.
Yeah. So value. We have to remember that there's value in our podcast, and we have to continue to deliver that value. So how can you tell me how you start formulating your podcast from the time that you begin the process of booking the guest, or whatever? What is the process that you go through to create your own video podcast all the way up to the publish?
Well, the interview style one I do, I kind of look at what's coming up in the season. So talk about adding value. When I do publish it, people can take the things that we discuss and immediately or very shortly after they read it, go out and apply it. Mm-hmm. So, in fishing, as many as other outdoor things, are seasons for different types of fish. So we try to talk to people about what's upcoming, and, if it's crappie season, we'll talk about crappies. If we're talking about pike, we'll be talking about pike and stuff like that. So they can immediately go out and take that value and put it to good use.
Right.
So that's kind of what kicks it off. I do the stuff I do isn't live because I got a lot of production in there that goes into one of those. I'm sure you've seen that, and I try to get them published as soon as I can, get through all the editing process. It's kind of crude. It's basically just me. My partner that works with me, Josh, he's in and out. He's more of a fisherman. I do a lot of the production work. Mm-hmm.
And what did you do to learn? Because you are editing video. What did you do to learn the video editing process? Do you edit on Premiere or Final Cut Pro? What are you editing on?
Actually, it's Cyberlink.
Okay.
Power Director.
Okay. So what kept you from going to like an Adobe Audition, or I'm sorry, not an Adobe Premiere or anything like that? It's just you already had this software.
I had it, and as I was playing around with it, I just grown accustomed to it, and it does a fine job for what I have to do. Mm-hmm. And it was a one-time cost. Otherwise, you get that Creative Cloud subscription. It's a recurring cost. So
right.
It's just something I've stuck with, and I work very well inside of it, and it worked for me. And I think that's the thing. I mean, people will tell you to use this or that, but if you're comfortable and you can do a professional job with any tool, use what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That particular sentiment, because years ago I had a friend of mine who told me all about editing in Audacity, and I told him I don't edit in Audacity, I edit in Audition. And then he was just like, well, Audacity is the best software out there, and it does this, and it's free and all that. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine, but I use Audition because Audition was what I was used to. I mean, I was using Audition back in the day when it was Adobe, or it was Cool Edit Pro. So it's what I've been used to. Could I have used Pro Tools? Yeah, I could have used Pro Tools if I wanted to. I could have used any software that I wanted, but this is the one that I was comfortable with. The only reason why I recommend using Adobe Audition is because you get that suite of software, but I don't recommend that you jump right into getting that suite of software if you don't know how to use it, because then it's just like dumping money down the toilet. So exactly. I always tell people, just use what you're used to, but when you're looking to and ready to level up, to have the apps work together to make the process of the workflow a lot easier, then start learning about those processes. But other than that, because if you don't know how to use those processes, then again, it's dumping money down the toilet. So that's why I always recommend that people go ahead and they look all this stuff up on YouTube, or take a course, or take some type of training to see how it all fits together. Now, does it mean that My process is the best, not necessarily. It means that this is what I've been doing for years. It probably could be improved upon, which is probably what you're saying with your video editing software, is that you know how to use it the best that you can use it, and it makes sense for you in the applications that you're using it for your videos.
Right.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So I think it's great that you use something that works for you. Are you editing audio in that as well? Because I've never heard of that software.
Yeah, it does have an audio suite in it as well. So yes, I do all my recording and everything.
Okay, that's great. And so let me ask you this one last question. How much time are you dedicating to developing content for this? You said you do seasons, right?
Yeah, but I also, I think if you've seen, I've actually been recruited by a magazine. I do some reports for them as well. So I am constantly doing some kind of video, audio, shoot, report, produce it, and I'm sending it out all over the place. So it's never ending. I think the root of your question is how much time do I spend on it?
Yeah.
Probably 10 hours a week.
Okay. So 10 hours. So you're talking like what? A couple hours every day?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. And that's probably including the video editing. What about the pre-show preparation, like scheduling the guests and whatnot? How long does that take for you?
That's only a couple hours, really. And then it's just getting some questions together. Like you said, you do a little research on the person. Usually it's somebody I know or know of that I'm going to interview. Mm-hmm. So I already have an idea of what I want to talk about. It's just laying out kind of a little storyline in notes that you want to go through and kind of lead them through the discussion.
Right.
I don't generally, give them a script up front. You want it to be spontaneous and honest. So, you may have notes and you ask the questions as it flows through.
Right. And so have you ever found yourself having a struggle with directing the conversation? Did you ever have that in the beginning where you're just like, oh, I don't know what I need to talk about? Or were you very natural as far as a conversationalist was concerned when it came to your curiosity?
Well, I think it went well, but you told me you've watched them, and I think I've been very fortunate that I've had several guests that you got to tell to slow down, or let's call that a wrap. They just want to keep on going.
Yeah.
So there's none of this like dead space that you got to think of, and a lot of ums. They are just really excited to tell you about their story, which is great. You get to sit back and enjoy their story. And like you say, make some keynotes for some questions you want to ask later.
Yeah.
But it's letting them talk about what they do and share their experiences.
Right.
And that's good for your listener because they're learning all this stuff as well.
Absolutely, 100%. Where do you see your podcast, say, in the next year?
I'm going to probably step it up. I'm looking at building some new sets. I'm actually putting a new set in so I can have really step up the video cast, so to speak. Multi-camera, I want to do some live, get some live guests in the studio, and also do some recorded stuff. But I think I'm really going to ratchet it up a few notches. Yeah.
And is it going to be a significant financial investment, or is it just a few things here and there that are going to make it a little easier on you?
Well, the camera gear I already have, because when I go out and shoot in the field, I bring 5 or 6 cameras with me, so I already have that. I have the soundboard. Basically, it's getting the new set lined up, and I'll need some video switchers and stuff for doing live. That stuff is. Other than that, a couple thousand, I'll be good to go.
Yeah, but you're putting an investment seriously into the video production of what you are creating. So now let me ask you this real quick. So this is only available in video format, or do you actually have it as audio format?
Not in audio only. No, it's not on any of the Stitcher podcasts and stuff. It's YouTube and Facebook. Is
there a particular reason why you're not on audio? I think you've mentioned this to me before in the past. I can't remember though.
I don't think that's a step I'm ready to take yet. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Not that I won't. It's just I'm not there yet.
Okay. So it's a matter of like getting this piece down first before you can step into that audio game. Because from what it sounds like is that even though you are doing seasons, the way I see it is that like it's a great opportunity for you to not only build that and harvest that audience on Facebook and YouTube, but when you come down to it later down in the future, you will actually have kind of, like a library of content that you can now start delivering as audio content, but creating and developing the context within the idea of the podcast. Because I'm sure there's a lot of what you're going through where you're saying, like, in this shot, or here's a picture, or you see the video of whoever's in the podcast itself on the video.
Right.
So it's a matter of probably adding context to the audio, because that's one of my big things, is that, like, it's always hard to hear a podcast whenever they're referring to everything in video. So I would imagine that may be part of what you're kind of like holding back on, or maybe
Sure.
I'm wrong on that.
Well, again, my big thing is I really enjoy video production.
Mm-hmm.
So, reaching out into, a lot of people think they want to start in a podcast and maybe reach into video. I'm the other way around.
Yeah.
So it's understanding, I'm playing in my space a little bit, and where can I take this to other markets? And again, you're looking at this as a business perspective. Where can you monetize? Where can you get the best value?
Yeah.
Where can you get the most value to your audience? So it's kind of getting a business plan together, where you're going to go and how you're going to get there.
Yeah, I understand that. So just having a goal and setting that goal, being ready to know when to execute on the next phase. I'm completely with you on that, because I'm with that in my own business itself. There are areas where I do need to improve and step up the game. None of this stuff takes, none of it happens all at the same time. It all is just gradual. And I'm sure you've realized that in your journey as well.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, George, I want to thank you so much for calling in and testing this out with me. It's very awesome to have you call in. I wanted to do something with you before, but this is basically a podcast within itself that I can go ahead and publish if I want to. But is there anything you want to share with the audience, like your website, so that people can see what you are doing?
Sure. You can catch me on Facebook. It's at POG Network. And if you're on YouTube here, just look up Pocono Outdoors Guy and take a look around. Please subscribe.
Okay, so POG, P as in Paul. So POG, Pocono Outdoors Guy.
Pocono Outdoors Guy, yep.
Network. Okay, so that's on Facebook. All right, cool. Well, George, I want to thank you again for joining, and just kind of keep me posted and keep me updated on what you got going on with as far as the production and how you are stepping up your game for your own video podcast. I would really love to hear where you are in the next 6 months.
We're glad to share it, and thank you for everything that you do. You've been a great inspiration as well.
You're very welcome, George. Thank you for everything, and we'll be talking to you soon, okay?
All right, Shannon.
All right, take care.
Bye.
So I want to thank George for being on. This is just a really good way to show you how you can instantly create content pretty much on the fly. You got to stay focused on what you are creating, stay focused within the context of the questions that you're asking. Always be a curious listener, always ask questions that are going to relate. There are times that I kind of get like thrown off, and this is something that just happens as a podcaster. You're going to get thrown off, and you're trying to think of questions to ask, but I always want to know and remember how can I provide value to the listener so that the listener can gain a perspective that may unlock and open a door that they have been standing in front of for so long that they are just not willing to go through until they actually see it. So that's really kind of where I'm coming from when I talk about developing podcasts on the fly. So I'm going to answer one real quick question, and then I'm going to go ahead and call it quits for the night. So let's go ahead, or the day, and we'll answer Luigi the Warrior's question here. It says, how do you add a small summary of the previous podcast episode in multi-track in Adobe Audition? How do you add a small summary of the previous podcast episode? From what I'm gathering in that, Luigi, I'm gathering that you're going to want to grab the previous episode, and you're looking to cut out a clip is what it is. And so you would want to cut out the clip inside of Adobe Audition. I know in Adobe Audition, what you are using, I can't remember because there's two different functions. I think you're using the letter R, and that will create the splicing tool. I think that's what it is, either R or V, the letter V. I can't remember, but I just do it kind of by memory. But you would want to just create that clip. So find the clip and splice your piece of audio, and then put it into the area of your multi-track, and then you should be able to create that little small summary, whether it's going in the beginning of the podcast or whether it's somewhere in the middle. It just is going to be all up to you, but you would want to use that splice tool from a previous podcast episode. It's as simple as clicking and dragging a file into the multi-track editor and then using the splice tool. So there's easier ways. That's just one way. And in fact, that's probably to me, the least effective way to do it, because there's other areas in which I know you can do it a little bit better. So thank you for that question. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching today's live feed. I had a lot of fun testing the software. The software that I am using is called Ecamm, and so it is for Mac only. So if you have a PC, it's not going to work for PC. If you're using a PC, you might want to use something like Wirecast, which is a little expensive. It's more on the expensive side, or you can use something that is more like OBS. OBS is free software, but it's just a little more clunky if you ask me. So it's just, you're going to have to decide what's going to work best for you. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for watching and contributing, and the phone calls from Ryan and George. Hopefully I can be able to do this later, a lot more down the line, where I am answering questions that will help you start stepping up your own podcast. So in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to you guys soon, and stay tuned on my email on my emails, because I'll let you know when I go live again. So take care.